I'm David S. Dawson from the Intellectual Podcast, a show that spotlights creatives from all walks of life, part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other incredibly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
This is the official GonnaGeek.com show. Each week, we run down the latest news and happenings in the world of geek. These are your hosts for the show, Steven, Chris, and SP.
Welcome to an all-new episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I am Steven John Drew, and with me is the wonderful Chris Farrell.
I'm here to smite and spite people tonight.
Oh, I can do that too. Guess who's here to spite us? It's SP. Welcome back, SP.
Absolutely. You know, I was having so much fun being off for 2 weeks. I thought I'd come back finally and just say, hey guys, I'm here to ruin your podcast.
Perfect. You know what? There are a lot of podcast advice shows out there that will help you ruin your podcast. Sorry. Let's leave that alone there.
And one of them is unprotected advice with Willie Nelson. Any advice you give, it will ruin your podcast.
And your life.
Go to unprotectedadvice.com for more unprotected advice from Willie Nelson.
You actually have the URL for that?
Yeah, I own unprotectedadvice.com. It redirects to my podcast site with anything tagged as unprotected advice.
Well, thank you. I was going to say in advance, but we'll just say thank you to Michelle and Suncast for filling in while SP was away. But SP, we did miss you. It's good to have you back.
It was great. It was, first of all, it's good to be back, but it was great to be gone for 2 weeks. I think this was the longest vacation I've taken in well over a decade. And it was really cool. It was cool because I went somewhere that was so remote that I didn't have to wear a mask anywhere for 2 weeks. And so then when I left a couple of days ago on Saturday to drive home, I got to the first rest area and gas station. I got to the first gas station and I almost got out of the car without the mask. I'm like, nope, we're going to wear a mask. So yeah, it's 2020 guys, but it was great. And it really rejuvenated me. I did no podcasting whatsoever except for test one device, which was disappointing. And I'll leave it at that for now. For more information, go to Better Podcasting, which you can find at betterpodcasting.com.
What was your favorite moment from the last 2 weeks of the official GonnaGeek.com show?
Not being here, to be honest with
that
you.
That was just a setup right there. You gave him a softball.
I did no podcasting for 2 weeks, and I might have felt a little bit guilty about it, honestly, but I did not have time to even watch the shows or listen to the shows. Even on my drive back, I was just trying to catch up with different things. I'm still trying to catch it. It's been 2 days and I'm still trying to catch up with stuff.
Well, I look forward to when you catch up because you should hear the things that Suncast said last week about you. All right, let's kick this all off here, the news this week, with some sad news from a piece of our history, but exciting news nonetheless, and apparently. I don't know why I can't speak, but anyways, Chris, tell us about how there's more farmers going under.
This is not sad news I bring you today, guys, because ding dong, the witch is dead. Which old witch? The Farmville witch. One of the things I've hated most about Facebook for many, many years is finally going away. I'm not the only one that hated Farmville, by the way. South Park has a fantastic episode where they rip on people's behavior towards playing Farmville and Facebook behavior, and it holds up to this day. But if you were not aware, the parent company Zynga is shutting down the original Farmville web game on Facebook at the end of the year. It's not entirely unexpected news because Facebook did say in July they would no longer support Flash games at the end of the year. This is the same date that Adobe is killing the Flash player. So that effectively kills off Farmville. For those that don't remember, the game launched in 2009. It had more than 10 million daily active users, in less than 2 months. And at its peak popularity, 30 million people were wasting their time playing Farmville daily, driving the company Zynga to record revenues. Now, we may not have heard much about the app in Facebook lately, but they have released mobile versions and a sequel to the mobile version, but it's never quite captured that same magic and the addiction that it had before. Thank God, editor's note aside. And if you want to keep playing right now, they haven't shut everything down yet. If you're still a Farmville player, you can continue to make in-app purchases until mid-November, after which they will shut down the payment system, and you'll be able to play the game through December 31st before it is permanently shut down. But if you're itching for more Farmville, though, don't worry. Zynga has promised that Farmville 3 is coming to mobile. So I'm sure you guys are really excited to be able to play Farmville 3. I, for one, am just excited that I'll no longer have to receive notifications in Facebook telling me, go water Steven John Drew's plants. She'll really help him out or something like that. Or getting notifications in my feed to be like, come be part of my farm experience. And I go, ugh. This is a good day in my mind because it is finally gone. I don't have to hear stupid stories of some people in my friend group going, I don't have time to play Farmville a lot, but I make my husband get up at 3 a.m. to water my crops on my phone. And I'm like, are you kidding me? No, this actually happened. And we won't talk anymore about that because it was terrible. And I will admit, full disclosure, I did play Farmville for somewhere between 10 to 30 minutes before I went, the F am I doing? I think is what I put it, how I put it. Turned it off and said, I'm never playing this game again.
So you made your fiance get up at 3 a.m. to water your plants.
I didn't know my fiance / now wife at this time when this person told this story to me about having their significant other wake up at 3 a.m. to water their plants because they were too tired to do it. And I kind of was like, really?
That's a convenient excuse.
So that's why your ex-girlfriend broke up with you?
Which one? There's some stories behind those. We can get into them because they're long exes now. But
oh, really? Naki, for instance?
Naki and I were never an item. We are just friends. But nice
That's
try.
That's not what my fanfic says, by the way.
I want to see this fanfic. Please post it and I will retweet it on Twitter at the Chris Farrell.
Let's just say that Jim Ballant does the artwork for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, somebody gets that.
So Farmville was the thing that everybody played before Candy Crush, right?
There's something after Candy Crush now that's probably the thing, but my thumb is so far removed from the pulse of pop culture that I have no clue what it is.
You got me there. I've never played a game. Well, no, I have played games on my phone. I played Final Fantasy on my phone. That's like Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, and Final Fantasy 4. I all played those on my phone.
Those are classics, and they're well worth your playing.
They're still on my phone, actually.
I have a confession to make. I actually had no idea that Farmville was still possible on Facebook.
You know, I did too, because I was shocked because I muted it as soon as they gave me the capability to mute notifications from certain apps and things like that. I was like, no, all these Farmville things are muted. I had no idea you could still play it on Facebook. And I read this news and went, it's worth talking about because it had such an effect on pop culture for so many years. And also kind of gets us into that discussion of there's these crazes that sweep through and something's popular for a time. And then we forget all about it until it goes away. And then we celebrate its death. So rotten hell, Farmville. Rotten hell.
You know, I heard though that they're going to be making a new modern version of this because that was all about, maintaining your crops and, living the farm life. I heard they're going to be making a podcasterville, and what it's going to be is all about being a professional podcaster, and you got to go in and you got to click affiliate links, and then you got to go and spam people with other, same advice, but then not give them the full advice and charge them for a paywall. That's what I heard. It's going to be.
Can you soon. Twitter bomb too in it?
Of course.
Yeah.
I heard it was going to be Call of Farming Modern Tractors is what we are going to get as the new spinoff.
Modern Tractors. Yeah.
Modern Tractors.
That's right up my alley. I dealt with a tractor in the past 2 weeks. Needed a new carburetor.
I mean, there's something to be said. And where it gets interesting is, remember, Facebook used to be kind of like this hub of all sorts of different games, especially in the 2009 to probably 2012, 2013 timeframe. There were all sorts of weird in-app games that would come on there, and there were microtransactions done through Facebook. And then we saw more of a heavy migration to purchase this in the App Store or purchase this in the Google Play Store, and you do your in-app purchasing that way. And they would use your Facebook login or something like that to authenticate and connect you to these accounts. So it's interesting to see how things have shifted, how a lot of people went, well, we're tired of giving Facebook a cut, so we'll give Google and Apple a 30% cut. I wonder what the Facebook terms were for the cut that they got. I would assume it's probably less than 30% at this point in time.
Yeah, I heard that Farmville was actually going to survive. It was moving. It was going from Facebook to Google Plus.
It's going to last a long time on Google Plus, I tell you what.
I just want to make the observation, though, that things haven't changed that much with Facebook, because you were talking about how like it used to be a hub of fun and things like this. And this game here allowed you to be a farmer. And as we all know, one of the things that you do as a farmer is you have to shovel dung. And most of the content on Facebook is the equivalent of shoveling dung.
Editorial aside, especially as we get closer to November, there's a lot more dung on Facebook the closer we get to November.
Yeah, in America, yeah. I've like almost totally non-news at this point. Oh, by the way, I used to play Farmville, but then Zuckerberg kicked me off of Facebook, so I can't play Farmville anymore.
Well, pour one out for anything but Farmville. Like, seriously, anything but Farmville. Go ahead and do it now. Thanks for updating us on this news that none of us knew still existed before this moment. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
Don't want to pour it over your keyboard, Chris.
Yeah, this is an expensive keyboard. I don't want to break it.
All right, well, let's move on to the next news point, which is about Google Play, and it's kind of similar to something we've touched about recently, and it's all about Google updating the Google Play terms of service. If you didn't know this, Google Play is basically your hub for your apps on Android. It's the equivalent to the iOS App Store. That's where you get all of your apps from, and Google has announced that as of next year, Android 12, they have plans to make it easier for Android users to be adding more app stores to their phones. They haven't said much more than that, but I guess they are seeing that some other companies might want to go and distribute their own apps through their own app store. There's a few reasons why you can speculate, one of which I'll mention in a minute, but there have been some issues in recent with certain third-party phones and them not being permitted to use the Google Play Store and
Huawei.
Exactly.
Huawei.
So I can see why they're probably doing this, because this is probably their way to skirt laws, possibly, in order to allow them to still put out a product of Android that can be used by companies that don't have access to Google Play. But that's just my theory on that.
Well, you can't have you can't get access to the official Google services and things like that unless you have Google Play services and things like that. I don't think that gets them around that. But I think it's more for if you want to more easily put, say, the Amazon App Store or something on there to buy things.
Well, that
makes your life easier.
Exactly, because as it is, all of the companies have to go and essentially make their own version of Android in order to do that. So this might make it a little easier for that distribution process. But they have reaffirmed its commitment to taking a 30% cut from app and in-app sales, very similar to what we've been hearing with the lawsuits lately with the Apple's App Store. Google has in the past had a history of being a little loosey-goose with the old 30% payment rules, and many developers have used this sort of loose rules in order to skirt having to pay that 30%. But Google says they are going to be enforcing this soon, and they're going to be enforcing all developers who wish to remain in the Play Store to use the payment platform if an app is through the Google is obtained through the Google Play Store. So this is what they're looking at doing. And they did it in recent, I think it was during like the COVID era here, they did go and cut the 30% fee for now, just I guess as a goodwill gesture, I'm not sure, but they are saying that they are going to be not only bringing it back, but hammering down on that terms of service and making people do that. So very, very similar here. And I'm curious to know who you think was sleeping with who between Google and Apple.
Oh, I think it's more that Apple established the precedent and Google said, hey, we're going to follow this because 30% is sweet. If you really wanted Google to go for a baller move, as the kids might put it at times, shift it to 20%.
SP, what do you think about the 30% take in general from both Apple and Android, or Apple and Google?
On one hand, it's pretty steep, right? But on the other hand, they are providing the avenue for everybody to actually be in these app stores and to use these apps on their devices. It's a little bit like a mall store. Now, malls 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever you want to call it, they were hopping, And to get the prime spot in the mall so that you got a lot of foot traffic, you got a lot of people coming in your store and buying stuff, the rent there was pretty high. And the people that sold a lot of things from their stores, or high value, because there's a lot of jewelry stores on those end caps, right? That they would be able to survive and pay those high rents in order to stay in business. It's kind of like this. You want to be in those app stores in order to sell your stuff. Those are the two big ones. I know Microsoft, we won't go into the other things out there, other mobile devices that are out there. The two big ones are Android and Apple, iPhone, iOS. And in order to sell your apps, you got to go through them. 30%, I think, is a little high in this day and age, where you have a lot of smaller transactions. Like apps aren't $30-$50 like they once were. They're like, if you find an app that's $10, so, oh my gosh, this better be really good. Most apps are between $1 and $5 right now. US, 2020 prices. And 30% is a little high. On the other hand, they're providing the infrastructure. So I don't know. I don't know what a true good market value is. I do know that as a developer or an app provider out there, I want that as low as possible. And if I'm Google or Apple, I want it as high as possible. So I don't know.
Let's go on to what I'm calling space news. So Space Note news. Space news.
I'm glad you got that pop filter there.
I don't think I've been on the show for 3 weeks, right? It's been a month since I've been on, right? Because we had a week off and then I was gone for 2 weeks. Is that right, Stephen?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we're on with it. Anyway, so I look back in the past 2 weeks at all the space news, and I know there's stuff that happened before, and there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about. We could talk about the potential of life on Venus. We could talk about the future of where astronauts are going to land on the moon, how much radiation they're going to be exposed to, yada, yada, yada. But I'm going to maintain course, and we're going to keep talking about Starship from SpaceX. I ran across a couple of articles on space.com by Mike Wall and NASAspaceflight.com by Chris Bergen, and that dropped today. And it was all about both Starship Sn8 Prototype and the Super Heavy. And this is all part of the Starship system that is going to be able to send 100 people colonization ship to Moon, Mars, wherever. So they had the hopper tests with SN5 and SN6. They intentionally blew the tank on SN7 to see exactly how far they could get with a certain version of the stainless steel metal that they're making the stuff out of. So Starship 8 is the next iteration of the ships in testing full capability for Starship. So what's going on? Starship Sn8 Prototype, this is the 8th version of the Starship Prototype, has arrived at the launch site for a test campaign full of firsts for SpaceX prototype vehicle. First of all, it's complete with aero surfaces. This will be the first one that has complete aero surfaces on it and not just a smooth, round body. And SN8 will be tested and launched with 3 Raptor engines on a refined test flight to 50,000 feet or 15 kilometers up. The vehicle is the first in a family of Starships that will incrementally test the launch, return, and landing capability ahead of the push to orbit, which will happen next year in 2021. The target altitude, and I just mentioned 50,000 feet, it has been refined. It was originally 12 miles up, and even before that, it was 20 kilometers, then moved to 18 kilometers, and now it's 15 kilometers. So they've reduced the actual height of this hopper test, but it's still miles. It's not meters or feet. It's well above the atmosphere. So or up into the atmosphere, not above the atmosphere. With SN8 moving to the launch site, stacking operations can now conclude on Starship SN9. With SN8 moving to the launch site, you have room to stack SN9. The final mating operations of SN9 are expected to occur over the next few days, with the 4 dome being stacked on Sunday. After we record this should be like a day or so after this podcast drops. And the last operation is the lifting of the stack into the final section, which is the thrust section, which will be housed in the next door bay. This will complete the SN9 stack. So SN8 will be completed and then start its flight testing, and SN9 will be stacked up. Once SN9 is finished, Sections for SN10 are expected to arrive for a buildup inside the mid-bay, following the same path as previous stacking flows. And in a sign of SpaceX's Boca Chica's, this is where this test thing is, right? Boca Chica. And I just love saying this. Boca Chica, Boca Chica, Boca Chica, Boca Chica. In the sign of SpaceX's Boca Chica incredible production cadence, SN11 sections have already been spotted outside the big tents with parts for starships, up to SN13 believed to already be on site in Texas. So we're talking about SN8 being completed all the way through SN13. But wait, guys, there's more. It's not just the Starship body. It's the mega launch vehicle called Super Heavy. So ever since Elon first noted that production on the first Super Heavy prototype was about to begin, checking the labels on steel rings became more important than usual. And thanks to the eagle eyes of NSF's photojournalist Mary, that first section for commercials Super Heavy was spotted during the week. It's named Com Barrel Assembly Booster, which is short for Commercial Barrel Assembly Booster.
Sorry, what? It was named what?
Com Barrel Assembly Booster.
And how do you spell?
COMMBARREL ASSYBOOSTER.
So what you're saying is that there is a Super Heavy that is named ASSI that is to do with something that has a thrust section that mates.
That's right.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what you're saying.
Okay, fair enough. Just to make sure I'm right there.
So the Com Barrel ASSI booster, which is a 3-ring section, will be located 2/3 up the lengthy booster and is set to be stacked in the nearly completed high bay facility. The current plan is for the first booster to be test flown to around 150 meters, which is very similar to the SN5 and the SN6 test profiles, under the power of 2 Raptor engines. Obviously going to have a lot more than 2 Raptor engines, but that's what they're going to test it with first. 2 Raptor engines. Guys, this is incredible. Also, since we last recorded the engines to the NASA version of this whole thing, the SLS, the engines were tested. I think I posted that video in Discord. It was incredible. Like a 2-minute test fire, which is about how much they run when you launch till main booster cut off. So there's a lot going on, not just with SpaceX, but with everything else. Is an exciting time to pay attention to space travel.
So question, which one of these is Suncast redirecting for his lollipop resupply on Mars?
We'll just call it SN13 because I think 13 would be a good number for him to use.
Side note, this is that same bag of Tootsie Roll Pops that's been sitting on my desk for 3 years since this gag first happened.
Eat it. Eat it.
That's not, I can't have a lollipop on the air. I'm going to sit there and make smacking noises. Do you want to edit that out?
No, I don't. I don't at all.
Are we going to try how many licks it takes to get to the center of a lollipop? Are we going to do that on the show?
Are you trying to sexualize me?
I was going to say, with some of the lingo that you just used, let's get away from the lollipops, please. Well, only thing that you could be worse is like, hey, this is the report on SN69 or something like that.
Nice. I mean, what? Sorry, South Park has that just built into my head anytime there's a joke like that.
At the rate that Elon is pushing SpaceX, I wouldn't be surprised that there will be an SN69 someday.
Well, do also remember the Model 3 was supposed to be the Model E, so we could have the Model S, E, X, and Y. So not exactly unheard of.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then BFG was not Big Falcon rocket, was it?
It's the Big Frackin' rocket.
Yeah.
It's not what he said in Australia or Mexico, was it? I think it was Mexico. That's not what he said there.
We can't say that word on our friendly podcast, but we can say frack all we fracking want.
We
That's
can
true.
say it. It's just Steven has to beep it.
So you're saying we should just say it right now so that Steven can bleep it?
I don't have a beep. I don't have a beep right now.
Well, you can just like drop it out so all you hear is and then kill it off.
I don't think that's going to work. I don't think so.
Well, let's find out.
I want to be lazy. That's what I'm looking out for, editor Steven, okay?
Ruining my fun.
Kidding aside, we don't generally do space news while you're away because none of us can do it justice, and I miss it. I miss it when you're away. It's so nice to have you back doing space news. Thank you, SP.
Oh, you bet. And there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening now that we're post lockdown. There's a lot of stuff that is continuing. Don't forget, we've got the James Webb Space Telescope that's due to launch. We've got just various things that are headed. And don't forget, we have those Mars probes that are traveling right now to Mars. They should start to land in February 2021.
And will Suncast meet them to say hello when he's on Mars?
I think he'll come up in his little dinghy and wave his flag and offer Mai Tais to them as they come on. Isn't it like that? Like
I will have you know that his dinghy is not little.
This is his first resupply of Tootsie Roll Pops. Comes in one of those probes.
From your desk.
Yeah, and then they traveled through space, so they're sure to be really fresh.
Well, moving on to the extra here. We just got a quick point here I want to touch on that might turn a little bit more long because it's about Google being confusing. Google does appear to be holding strong on their decision to make Google Meet come under limitations for the free, for the unpaid participants to 60-minute sessions as of September 30th. If you don't remember this, back in, I think it was April, Google officially opened up Google Meet to the public. This is something that they did, people presumed, in response to COVID and people being at home, is they took what was supposed to be a specific paid service for businesses, essentially like a Zoom for Business, and they opened it up to everybody, which made us scratch our head a little bit because Duo was there and there was a lot of similarity. They even expanded group calling on Duo and Meet, and there was some sort of one-on-one calls. It was really confusing. And then it started to make a little bit more sense because it was looking like the two of them were going to be merging. There was a news article that came out saying that, as well as like their messaging service was all going to be thrown under one banner on the Google side of things. And so it was presumed that the two were going to be merged. And that was the rumors that Google Meet and Google Duo were going to be merged. But now it looks like they are holding firm on the limitation to 60 minutes as of September 30th, which makes things even more confusing because we have now a couple of services out here that are available to the public, and allegedly Google Duo is being rolled into Google Meet. And if that's the case, well, then Google Duo is kind of the FaceTime version for Android. And then there's a 60-minute limitation. I'm all sorts of confused with this here, especially if they are going to merge the two. So what do you think about this, Chris Farrell?
I don't care. I mean, I guess it's interesting. I haven't used either service. So the fact that they may merge, they may not merge, they're putting time limits on things. I sort of get the idea of what they're doing by putting anything over 60 minutes, you basically have to be a paid customer for, because it tries to get people to sign up for the service that is more geared towards businesses. But the whole concept of potentially merging Duo with it, I don't get why they would do it, especially if it's supposed to be a FaceTime thing. But it's Google and messaging services, so it's never going to make sense to me because it's always screwy and doesn't make sense.
Especially because Google Duo is doing well. And
is it? I've never used it but once.
No, it's doing pretty good. I know, like, my experience with it is, and I've used it regularly, it continues to improve. And I actually know several Apple users who use it because they can use it on their Apple device and to Android people.
Okay. So did I misunderstand that the 60-minute time limit is going to apply to Google Duo now as well? Or?
Yeah, it's just Google Meet. Just Google Meet.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting change of how they're handling something as they're starting to change their processes in a COVID world and seeing how things are working out. I don't think it's really a huge story. I think it's interesting, but
I think that they're just trying to continue to go neck and neck with places like Zoom that do limit it. And so they're like, yeah, we got to get that limitation on there and continue making this a reason for businesses to pay for this.
Interesting. I don't use Zoom either, except for like once or twice for some stuff. And it's always been like 30 minutes max because everything we do at work is via Microsoft Teams. So I haven't explored any of these other tools, to be honest.
You were shaking your head no, SP.
Google Meet is a Zoom competitor, plain and simple. And I know a lot of schools moved off of Zoom into Google Meet when they had their whole security issue earlier this year, as people were trying to just figure out how to do distance learning. And I think that is the niche for Google Meet. I think Duo is more like a FaceTime competitor, and FaceTime is pretty cool if you're just going one-on-one with somebody. And that's kind of the premise of Duo. And you're seeing more and more people doing calls where they're holding their phone out and they're actually doing the video call back and forth, whether they're using Duo or FaceTime or whatever. And I think that's pretty neat right there. What I will say is that I can imagine the total chaos that 2020 would have been had Blab actually come out in 2020 versus when it came out like 5-6 years ago, because it would have completely borked up everybody because they wouldn't have able to handle the bandwidth. And I think maybe that's what this is coming in as. These companies are providing these services. There's a lot of bandwidth that happens with these services, and it's money. Bandwidth is money. It's less money than it used to be, but it's still money. And so they have to keep the servers going. They have to keep the bandwidth. They have to keep the lights on, so to speak, in order to make this happen. And if you're not paying for it, there's only so much that they're willing to do off their bottom line in order to keep the services going. And I think a 60-minute limit is actually pretty tremendous in this year. I think the only reason they chose 60 minutes this year is those hour-long meetings that people are having to work from home. And if it wasn't for 2020, they wouldn't be at 1 hour. They would be closer to half an hour or 15 minutes.
And to be frank, if a meeting lasts longer than an hour right now, I generally hate my life. So this limit is pretty great for people like me that are like, oh my God, at least we're at the 59-minute mark. This can only last one more minute.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I was a little confused about this, because you would think they'd be putting the limitation on to drive businesses to actually pay for the service like is intended with Google Meet, right? But an hour allows a lot of the businesses to keep doing it. So if you were to like at 30, 40 minutes, that's a lot. People always go, well, we'll schedule a half-hour meeting, and then it runs to like nearly an hour. So it seems like more businesses would be willing to pay for it that way.
Is there a feature difference between the free tier and the paid tier that it does?
Fair.
Like Google Apps integration or Google Drive integration? I honestly don't know. Maybe that's another way you drive there, is you give people the chance to have that 60-minute meeting. But oh, look at all these other tools that we could interact with. And if they're a G Suite shop, that's probably a good thing.
This is still early in the work from home era. We just started this in mass this year, and people are still working from home now. I think they're trying to hook people. I think they're not trying to drive business away. They're still trying to drive business, but they know that they need to hook people in longer and longer until it just becomes part of their everyday expectations at their work environment. And then they got them, and then they can send the bill to the companies.
That's fair.
But it's cheaper for companies to pivot to this telework model than it is to try and put everyone back in offices and keep them clean in the middle of the coronavirus.
Oh, well, true. But would you rather them come to your version of the teleconferencing, or do you want to drive them to a competitor?
No, I completely get what you're saying. More my point was, what we should hopefully start to see here is a realization from a lot of these companies that, holy crap, it's more beneficial to us, especially when it comes to cost, to not have to open all this office space just to have people sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, because they can stay at their own house for 8 hours a day, use these different tools that are available, still be able to coordinate and talk to people in a way that matters. And it would save them money, and then sort of screws the employee because we're using our own equipment in most cases. But there's company savings to be had here. They just have to get past the mindset of, I need to be able to look in your cube and make sure you're working all day long.
My mind still goes back to 2012, 2013, I believe it was. And Stephen, your brother, cobbled together 2 video Google Hangouts sessions in order to put more than, I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 people together at the same time on the same call. That was not that long ago. And now we're talking about hundreds of people and millions of people really on a daily basis, but hundreds of people being able to be in a company-wide broadcast meeting, something like that. And I'm not talking about like the Apple event or the Microsoft event. I'm talking about company-wide meetings, and it's capable of happening on a daily basis versus where we were 8 years ago. We've come a long way.
Very true. Well said, SP.
Well, all I got to say to the point that Chris said about, companies needing to realize that they don't need to just check in on our cubicle all the time. I wear my pants like 60% more at home than I did at the office. I'll just go ahead and say that.
You had one of those kind of offices, eh?
Let's go ahead and move on to Geek Wars.
You must work with Zarian.
All right, let's go here to something that was been in the works for a few weeks. It's a little dated themed of Geek Wars, but I made the questions and damn it, I'm going to use them, okay?
Sure. I mean, don't the questions have rights?
All right, the Geek Wars is themed based off of a news point that I did a few weeks ago with Michelle Elion here, because as I mentioned, when I did that news point, I had intended to do the news point the week before, but then we had no episode, like SP mentioned at the beginning of the show. And it's all to do with the wonderful world of tech components. Specifically, we're going to be looking at video cards and things like that, because Nvidia came out with a new series of video cards like a month ago. And so I was going to, at the time we talked about this, be doing a version of Geek Wars. And so this was going to play off of that. And I was going to be a whole bunch of little related to primarily graphics card companies and questions to do with that.
It's going to be a score of 1-0 when it's all said and done, because one of us will get lucky.
and we'll see. We'll see how it goes, because it's largely related to graphics card companies. There are a couple that are not, so we'll see how that goes. And if you didn't know how Geek Wars works, I ask questions, and these two answer them, and we see who is the bigger geek, and they have to ring in. And if they ring in and they get it wrong, the other person has a chance to answer. So what names are you going to ring in with today, Chris?
Chris?
And USP?
USP.
Okay, USP. All right. So we got USP and Chris playing.
What is that an acronym for?
Unqualified Stargate Pioneer.
So you're automatically qualified to go on Unqualified Gamers.
If that was still a podcast, sure.
There's an Australian version.
No, not Unqualified Gamers.
Oh, that's right. It's Game Life Balance now.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for him to realize what he said was wrong.
Maybe I'm just going to poach it and bring it back.
You should.
I'm gonna make a deal with Cody to bring it back.
Don't make a deal. Just do it. Just register a new
That's
domain.
That's a great idea.
Just
hey, Cody, I stole your podcast name.
He's too busy being a new dad, right? Like,
you'll never notice until the first year of podcast is out.
Exactly.
I've effectively replaced him in everyone's hearts and minds.
Will you be verified then?
I'll never be verified. I tried that. It didn't work.
No. All right. Well, let's go ahead and start off here and start off with question number 1. In 2000, in the year 2000, ATI changed to primarily being known under what name? I've started off with a hard one.
No idea.
No? Take a guess. Come on. Take a guess.
Chris.
All right, Chris.
Creative.
No. SB.
Say your mom.
ATI. I want. It's not Nvidia, is it?
No.
Yeah.
It is Radeon Technologies Group.
Oh, Radeon.
So
that makes sense.
I would have just taken Radeon. So that's 0-0 for both of these guys. Question number
I'm shocked.
2. Which desktop processor, see, I said primarily graphics, which desktop processor was discontinued in 2003, but had initially turned heads because of its unique cartridge and slot design? It was a cartridge and a slot, which was quite different from this company's processor history.
It's not Intel.
Chris.
All right.
Pentium 3.
No, that is incorrect, but close.
Oh, you can't give hints like that.
Okay. USP.
All right. USP.
Pentium 4.
Wrong. Pentium 2. Pentium 2.
Ah, we're both incompetent.
I've known that for years, Chris.
Pentium 2. I actually
Fair.
put that one in there because the first computer that like I had was the Pentium 2, and I remember thinking it was so cool
Me
that it had like this
too.
cartridge type thing. It was like it was all built-in design, but yeah, it was a cartridge. And to me, it felt weird when they went away from the cartridge because it just made sense.
I had a Packard Bell Pentium 2 266 megahertz processor. Woo!
I had the very first commercial Pentium processor, and I think I've told the story on the show before. It was one that had that math error that was integrated into it.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I was in college at the time. They said, okay, so we have a priority. It was a Pentium 60, by the way. And they said, we have a priority for replacements. Are you in academia? And at the time I was. I said, yes. So check. Are you in the aerospace industry? Yeah, check. And are you doing anything with the military? I said, yeah, check. They said, we'll FedEx it to you tomorrow. And people were like waiting months, and I actually got it the very next day. So that was cool. And I remember it was the first chip I ever replaced, and there was no goo back then. It was literally like pins that went in, and there was this little lever that came up, and it just popped up, and I put the new chip down and put it back down, and it worked, and it was great. It was the first tinkering with computers that I had ever done.
Fun fact, the Pentium 2 also had MMX technology. Remember MMX?
MX.
All right, this next one here, I think one of you guys can get. Which brand is known for Crossfire? Oh, come on.
SP?
SP?
Nvidia?
No, that is incorrect.
Damn it.
Chris? AMD?
Yes, that is correct. You are at one. Woo!
You the one that got lucky,
That's
you SOB.
the one, yeah. I'm married. I don't get lucky. Come on.
Oh, you finally admits it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Time to play into the joke.
Yeah, joke. Next question here. N-Force is what type of chipset? Mobile, portable gaming, or motherboard? N-Force. N as in November. N-Force.
USP.
USP.
Mobile?
Oh, mobile is incorrect.
What were the options again?
Mobile, portable gaming, or motherboard?
Portable gaming is what I'll go with.
That
Chris.
is incorrect. Again, you guys have
Motherboard.
left-
Mobile.
Mobo. I thought he was saying Mobo. I almost gave him the point. So that's, yeah. So it's Chris at 1, SP at 0.
I think Steven stumped the chumps this week.
All right, this next one here. Between the year 2000 and 2004, AMD's budget processor line was named what? The AMD what?
Steven, I was in college during that time frame, and I had far better things to do than pay attention to computer processors.
I was in the desert fighting bad guys then. I didn't care.
My brother
I was
had
in the
one of
streets
these.
fighting beers.
My brother had one of these, so you had no excuse, okay? It was the Duron. That's
That actually sort of sounds
Does
familiar.
not, yeah, whatever.
All right. In 2010, Intel purchased which security company at a deal valued $7.68 billion? In 2016, Intel announced that this brand would be converted to a joint venture with TPG Capital. Which security company?
USP?
USP.
McAfee?
Yeah! There you go. Tied.
It was either that or Norton. I wasn't sure.
No, I was like, which one? Let's go with Mac.
And in the chat, Kent guess the other one. All right. So before acquisition by AMD, ATI was largely a graphics, a GPU manufacturer based out of which region?
Can you say the question again, please?
Before acquisition by AMD, ATI was based out of which region? Chris.
North America?
I need more specific than that.
Oh.
USP? Silicon Valley?
No. Chris, you have one more since I didn't say more specific than that.
No,
United
I'm calling
States?
foul on this. He's wrong.
You guys are way wrong. It was Canada. It was Ontario, Canada. So they were.
Where's that?
They were on Ontario.
That is a
Ontario.
country, not a region. You said region.
Ontario is a region of Canada.
Ontario is a province.
Oh my God! He said Silicon Valley. One of you two. Come on now, like
I know. I said North America. That's a region.
Whatever.
Silicon Valley is a region. It's not the name of a town or anything.
I think that ATI was based out of the planet Earth. Oh, there we go.
Earth is not a region. It's a
third
planet.
rock from the sun.
Oh my God. Anyways, that's fine. That's fine. Neither.
Kent agrees. North America is a region.
Well, it's not.
It's okay. It's my ring finger. See, that's exactly what I thought. DVD locking says North America is a region.
North America is used as with the term region, but it's technically a continent.
Oh, what'd you just say? Technically, it's used with the term region. I just heard that.
No,
I don't care.
Not,
I don't want the point.
If you actually go to regions under the North America Wikipedia law or area, there is actually geographically the North America continent has many regions and subregions. Bam. There you go.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we need an impartial third-party judge. So we need to bring Willie on the show and get his final answer on that.
Fair enough. All right. So let's go on to the next one here. CUDA stands for what? No, I'm just joking. Here, I'll make it easier for you guys. CUDA was originally an acronym for something. Blank.
Oh, geez.
Let me finish. Blank Unified Device Architecture was the C, container, compute, component, or chipset.
USB. Chipset.
Wrong.
So you got 1 in 3 chance, buddy.
Component.
Wrong. It was compute.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
And the second to last question. The second to last question. Nvidia is known for using GeForce as their core software. What was the name of ATI's key driver prior to 2015? You guys never had an ATI card. So disappointed in you.
I did.
I had one on my GameCube.
Yeah, I bought one a couple years ago for my son's computer, but it was a wimpy one.
I'll never forget this name. Going once.
Chris. A-Force.
No, it wasn't A-Force. SB?
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm just gonna let it roll.
It was Catalyst.
No, that.
It was the Catalyst driver. That's what it was. I made that one without even looking it up. Okay.
Steven, would you want to pull a bunch of trivia from like years 2002 through 2007? You got to realize that was senior high school and college.
You got to know your co-hosts a little bit better,
this was a look
Steven.
back related to the news and history and everything. So you guys can just, anyways. VCE, last question. VCE officially stands for Video Code Engine, according to AMD. However, there were 3 other names that it was referred to in official documentation before this decision was made. Take a guess at what VCE they used. What other names would they have maybe used instead of Video Code Engine? What else might they have said on official documentation? 1 point for everyone you get right.
Video computer encoder.
No. Chris, I'll give you 2 shots each. Come on, it's right there. Not Video Code Engine, but video computing engine. I don't know. Video coding engine, video compression engine, and video codec engine. I didn't even give you your second chances.
It's because we're so pathetic we don't deserve them.
I got kind of close. I said encoder. I didn't say
close.
codec, but I said
close.
encoder.
It was close.
Yeah, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. We weren't close enough.
You were close because it was a tie, which is the best place for Geek Wars to end.
Back to traditions. It's like JS is back on the show. We tried to tie all the time.
So in the chat, Suncast is making a comment about how I have a something for ATI, and absolutely I did, because ATI for a very long time was a big part of my life as well. AMD was a big part of my life because there was a period where ATI was the go-to video card, and also AMD was the go-to processor. So for a while, they were my thing. So absolutely, I did 100%. But there you guys go.
A lot of people say the AMD is the processor to use these days, and so a lot of people are going away from the Nvidia graphics card. Although this latest suite it's pretty sweet. And
if you're going away from the current crop of Nvidia graphics card products I just dropped, I don't know what you're doing. People.
Yeah, ATI still has some pretty big driver, or AMD has some pretty big. AMD has some big driver issues still.
Well, I mean, they got closer last generation, right? And if they get a little closer again, then maybe in the next generation they can beat them.
But the trade-off was the Ryzen line and stuff. The equivalents were cheaper than the Intel ones, so a lot of people started going AMD because performance was equivalent, if not slightly better, for a cheaper price.
Yeah. Right now,
that's my understanding.
Right now, there's a lot of problems with the current gen of Intel latest and greatest processors. As far as video cards go, I would love to hear the use case for AMD video cards over Nvidia. I would like to know what the argument is for that, because I don't know.
I think the ray tracing completely swamps it right now. I think Nvidia's got it for the next couple of years, like I was saying.
Yeah. So there you go. You walk down memory lane. Not as cool. Several weeks after the news.
Walk down a lane, a memoryless lane, maybe not memory lane.
You know what? We got to know a little bit about your first processors, Chris's beer drinking habits, and how you somehow lied and said that you were important in order to get a processor the next day. So there we go. We all learned a little bit today,
and how Steven has
I did not lie.
Great love for ATI. I won't repeat how Suncast put it, but great love for ATI.
Exactly.
You want me to send you my GameCube because it has an ATI card in it? It's a little ATI sticker.
I have a GameCube.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Sweet.
For my son, it's my son's, but it's in my house.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. You're good.
Apparently, I also pay for his storage area, so all his stuff is mine. Yeah.
All your stuff belong to us.
If you did better than these two in Geek Wars, please tweet us at GonnaGeek or come to our Discord server at GonnaGeek.com/Discord and let us know, how did you do? Try to put these two to shame, or better yet, shame me for doing a terrible version of Geek Wars.
Apparently, if you do better than us, then you might be the new host of Gonna Geek.
It's that easy to get out?
I know. Just find somebody that's better than us.
I was going to say, they're going to be the new host. I get free? Sweet.
Yeah, you can have, if there's somebody that does better and you like better and then meshes better with you, then they should be the host on the show.
So what you're saying is Willie Nelson is going to be the host of the official.
No, he's coming on just to do the tiebreaker. He's the judge. I don't think that Willie and Steve. No,
I'm sure he can come and give some unsolicited, unprotected advice as well.
All right. Well, before we go, let's go ahead and turn it over here. Let's start off with Mr. Pioneer, because he's been away for a little bit, and let's just find out what he would like to plug or promote.
I would like to promote that you should go in, I believe, a number of different streaming services, and you should watch Star Trek: The Next Generation. Why? Because it premiered 33 years ago today in 1987. I still remember that night because my dad was such an original series guy. I remember as a little kid, we were watching it together, and we watched it originally, and he was all in for a couple episodes, and then he kind of faded away. And then I encouraged him to come back with the Borg episodes and later on in season 3 and season 4. But this was the start of it 33 years ago today, and it has an incredible series all the way through to the modern Discovery series, which I thought I wouldn't like, and I did. So yeah, go ahead, and I'm just going to plug that.
I have to say, I love the history of Star Trek: The Next Generation and how much hatred it got, because I am not one of those Star Trek fans that trash on everything modern. I'm a firm believer as well that the old format doesn't work for my modern sci-fi. And I think that there's a lot of people right now who complain about Star Trek just based purely on the fact that it's different and it's new and it's trying something new. And I love that people had those same complaints about TNG, because now we look back on it as classic Star Trek, as TNG. So I really like that, because I think it's a great thing to refer to about how sometimes change is hard with Star Trek and it works out.
I'm listening to the podcast, The Delta Flyers.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, Ensign Harry Kim and Lieutenant Paris. And they talk about things, and they're both accomplished actors, and I guess Robert Duncan McNeil is a producer and a director.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've done incredible stuff afterwards. I had no idea that Robert Duncan McNeil actually directed a couple of episodes of Desperate Housewives, and that was some of his favorite shows that he directed. But anyway, I'm listening to it, and one of the things that they blamed on Voyager was all the crappy old tech that they were stuck with, because it came out in TNG in like 1987, and they were stuck with it like 15 years later.
That's so true. Getting stuck with the things of the past. And that's something that I noticed, because I'm now rewatching Enterprise, and they did a good job, I thought, of modernizing, but keeping in the universe. It was more retro, because it was like real present day hardware, like LCD displays and like keyboards and physical buttons and things that you would actually see as like good technology of like when Enterprise was created. But it was like it still had that feel of, oh, okay, it's in the future, but it's obviously not as good as TNG because it's like analog buttons and stuff. So I thought they did a good job with that, and I can see how them having to keep with what TNG had would be a little hard.
Well, I mean, you started to see that evolution now, because in Star Trek Picard, I guess this is a minor spoiler alert, like they don't have the traditional LCARS touchscreens, like everything is holographic and things like that. And there's a throwaway line that Picard has of, I don't know if I know how to do this when it comes to using this holographic interface, because they finally evolved past what we saw in 1987's TNG, because pretty much all of the Treks after that used that same kind of touchscreen keyboard components instead of having like flips and switches and things like that. It was all touchscreen stuff.
Yeah, and I think at some point with fandom, we have to just accept that sticking with what was possible on screen at one point can't be continued, and that it starts to look dated. So, check out TNG and laugh at all of the ways that they reused old props, like the original battle bridge being a redress of the motion picture bridge.
Trying to save some cash.
Yep.
How many times did the battle bridge appear on screen? I'm really not concerned about that.
They redid it though. That was, I think, the only time that they used that exact version. After that, they kept the same sort of layout, but completely changed it. So,
I mean, like the transporter was from TOS, but flipped upside down and stuff like that. They reused a lot of props across all of the Trek up until we got to modern Trek.
The Delta Flyers, they go into a lot of the Paramount filming studios and what was on the lot, and that they were actually at the end of Paramount's heyday, where they actually had prop makers and set makers there. And when they started filming Voyager, and by the end that they had all that stuff got outsourced and left and stuff like that. So it was really truly the end of the era once you got to the Voyager from TNG. And Voyager was the last in the series of that timeline, really, because you had DS9 and Voyager and TNG.
Going all to those props and stuff, one thing to consider is that stuff's not cheap, going and having a set built or things like that. That's why they reuse so much. Like, for instance, Battlestar Galactica parallel here. The only reason they had a different CIC for Pegasus when Pegasus showed up is because there was a Lost in Space pilot that was done that flopped and wasn't picked up. So they bought the set from Lost in Space and then redressed some stuff in there to make the Pegasus CIC. That's how expensive some of this stuff is. And that's why they had something that looked so different, because they got it for dirt cheap.
I can see
I did not know that about Pegasus. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
All right. And Chris, is there anything you want to plug or promote?
Well, if we're going to plug TV shows, SP recommended Star Trek TNG because of its anniversary. This isn't an anniversary, but I'll recommend it because I was a latecomer to it, and then I consumed it all in like 2.5 weeks. Lucifer, which is a Netflix original now, was originally on Fox, is it's halfway through its 5th season. It is a take on the Vertigo comics Lucifer, as in Satan, the devil living in LA, and it is really good. really good. I highly recommend it. The cast has really good chemistry together, and I think Tom Ellis is just delightful, who plays the lead of Lucifer Morningstar, aka the Devil.
And I just want to go ahead and say right now that I want to promote these two fine hosts. These two fine hosts are fantastic people. I really did miss having you on the show the last couple of weeks, SP, and I wanted to give a special shout out to Chris because he did fill in last week on the Better Podcasting live chat. So these two are wonderful people. And I
thought he was going to say he was sorry he was stuck with Chris during that time.
No.
Well, thank you very much. I did look around my shoulder a little bit to see who you were actually talking about. But it was really cool having 2 weeks off. And thank you very much for that. And thank you very much, Chris, for filling in on the Better Podcasting live show. I will give you thanks again when we finally record next week, that show. And we'll see how that goes.
So on that note, for episode number 347 of the official GonnaGeek.com show, I'm Willie Nelson saying I'm taking over the hosting duties.
And I'm SP, wondering why Steven didn't use a deep fake rather than a mouth hole to pull that gag.
I'm Chris Farrell, and I say Conan O'Brien's going to sue you for that gag.
Yeah. I won't make the joke I'm going to make. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or a thumbs up on YouTube. You can always join us for our live recording sessions, which stream Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. And remember, you can find our full back catalog at GonnaGeek.com/show. If you're itching for more geeky content, check out other shows on GonnaGeekNetwork.com. Voice work was by Emily Prokop of The Story Behind podcast. That's it for this episode. We hope to see you back again next week.